Okay.
All about post sound, guys. I'm going to talk every single aspect ever, and I need to cram it into an hour. If I end up talking fast, put it in the chat, please. I can sometimes speak really fast. But this is all about post sound with me, Jacquelyn Chin, featuring B-reels of me trying not to hate Pro Tools. Anyways, who am I? This is the same introduction as the fall. I graduated Ithaca in 2023 as a cinema prod major. I'm now a member of MPEG in IATSE. Last year I worked on Blue Bloods. I also was a PA on Screenboat, which is coming out in like 2 weeks. And then I was an intern on Copa Panda 4 like a few years ago. So yeah, I didn't always work as in sound, and I still don't always work in sound, and that's fine. Keep your options open. Um, so who's who in the pecking order in post sound? Some of this might be like inaccurate. This is just to my understanding because there's people who work based off the project versus like people who like I'm a freelancer. I work based off the project. Some people work through a company and then we like hire that company to do stuff. So the post sound hierarchy. Please don't ask me about music. That is a whole other beast with like the music director and the composer and like I don't know. I don't know that. But at the top is like the re-recording mixer and the supervising sound editor. The supervising sound editor, if you want to get into sound, is the one you want to befriend because they're the one who hire people. But please note, sound designer's not on here. Sometimes movies and TV shows use it, other times they don't. Um, Typically, if anything, it's an effects editor. Sometimes the re-recording mixer and the supervising sound editor are the same person. Sometimes the supervising sound editor also does editing. Sometimes they're just the supervisor. It really just depends, at least to my knowledge. But underneath them, like there's like the engineer. So the re-recording mixer, like say for the project I'm on now, is tied to the post house that we're like mixing at. So there's like engineers and mix techs and mix assistants that help them. And then underneath the supervising sound editor, there's like all the different sound editors. The music editor sometimes is like has a different pecking order just because like there also is like the composer and like the music director and whatnot. ADR and Foley could also be tossed out to vendors, so that could also be potentially like um, not within the pecking order because they also have their own engineers for like the ADR studio or like Foley studio. Like my first ever project, we'd had like our Foley people were in the UK. Um,
So
but under
Jacqueline, for noobs, what's ADR?
ADR stands for automated dialogue replacement. So say someone said like what we had to re-record the word religion recently because a guy says religious and it was really hard to like stitch an N on that and it sounded really, really weird. So we had to go back and record that. Um, or sometimes someone says like a name wrong, or there's also loop group which is really fun because that's typically a narrative. So, and all those people in the background where they're totally saying things, but on set they're not saying anything at all. Guess who gets to fill that in? Voice actors. How fun. Um, and Foley is like mainly footsteps, but there's other sound effects that they add in. So like cut like silverware. You don't have actual silverware because that's too noisy. You don't have actual ice in those cups. Also, those will melt. So instead you have plastic and then you just fill that in later. Um, so for me, I'm an assistant sound editor. And so some projects have that, some projects don't. And then underneath that, it gets even rarer on the sound side. So apprentice editor and editing room assistant, mainly for picture, as far as I can tell. We actually have I'm calling you out here, Colin. But he is an apprentice editor on the same project I work on. He's on the picture side. So yeah, if anything I say about apprentice editing and like the picture side is wrong, just stop me and let me know, Colin, because I've only worked in sound. I don't know picture that well. And then there's interns because everybody loves a good internship. Anyways, so what the heck is entry level? Intern is as standard as it can be across all companies. Sometimes you're paid, sometimes it's stipend, sometimes it's college credit. Who knows? But you really train under the assistant or apprentice, and it really depends on like the company that you go to. So like I know Warner Brothers in LA, they have interns for the sound team. In New York, they do not. Um, some places have it, some places don't. And you're really shadowing and like doing more organizational stuff. Apprentice and editing room assistant, way more prevalent on the picture side. I have heard like it's basically almost nowhere to be found on the sound side, like very, very rare. Um, It can be union, and the primary job is to do more like PA stuff like data and IO or like logging. But if like you're really good, obviously they'll give like you shots to do it. Like Colin here has cut music and temp effects for the show that we're on, like because he's just that good. Yes, I'm calling you out again. Assistant picture editor might do more like prep work for picture. Again, searches for like temp sound effects and like if they're really good, may cut a scene or like cut other stuff. And assistant editor, I'm the liaison. So anytime that picture has something for sound, it goes through me. So anytime that there's any little change, the other day we were literally during our director review had like 16 frames that we had to change. Had to do that. We had to change that on the spot right before we did the review. So if it's needed and if like you can, you might find dialogue alts, you might cut sound, might search effects libraries, you might do other editing stuff, but typically you are mostly doing conforms, which means anytime that there's a change, you got to make sure that the Pro Tools session matches up with picture for any little change. A mixing assistant sometimes is a union role. I'm pretty sure they're union, at least from the places I've gone to, they're union. The mix techs and mixing assistants are the union. And the mixer that I'm working under right now, he was originally a mix assistant and then eventually became a re-recording mixer. So the mix assistant would like prep the stage, manage the session. I thought something fell. Set up equipment and like perform like basic tests around the studio, whereas like the mix techs might like calibrate and maintain the mix stages, whereas and like troubleshoot technical problems. Um, Sometimes they'll be literally re-rigging the stage as you're there, and that's kind of scary. How to not put the ass in assistant. Um, yeah, I try to have fun with these. So here's my responsibilities. Similar to what I put in my earlier I did a presentation in the fall about being in IATSE. So if you want more about like the benefits of that, I'm talking from a union perspective. Typically in indie and non-union, there's not really assistance just because there's no budget for that. But for us, you'd create the assembly. So what's the assembly? You take the AAF, you take the Avid or the Premiere or the DaVinci file, make it into an AAF, so it's like universally like read, and then you make the assembly. So everything's organized, all the clips link, any like idiosyncrasies that Pro Tools decides to freak out and have, you're the one who fixes that. So for narrative, you're gonna have multiple tracks because Picture Team does not have the time to be editing with 8 tracks for microphones. They're just gonna use the mix track. And then we are like my job is to expand that and sync it because sometimes Pro Tools has a problem with expanding and it's suddenly 2 seconds off. So you gotta make sure it's synced up and make sure it's like and double check that. Conform sessions, so like any new versions of the picture edit, you gotta like fix that. And then occasionally you might find, again, alternates for dialogue, record temp audio for like ADR, search for sound effects. And this is where like the PA type stuff comes in, where you are the master of the archival server. If anything needs to go to an ADR vendor, this like a Foley vendor, you're the one who has to send that out. When you go to mix, you're the one who's like sending the pictures and guides. And you're the one who's dispersing all like the assets. So you're like the person to be like, hey, like what's the latest version of this? Like is this correct? You would be the one to be like, yes, the one from March insert date is correct. You'll go to mix reviews and ADR sessions because sometimes you might have to change things on the spot. And sometimes you might take notes in ADR sessions if needed. Typically the ADR editor would do that. And of course, like administrative and editorial things as needed. And sometimes you might cut sound um, if needed. So like I was able to cut M&E, which means music and effects tracks for streaming deliverables for Blue Bloods. So you know how like there's other languages on streaming services? Yeah, you had to mute all the English and then go through and find the production effects and pull those out. Um, for the mixer to remix. But for that project, the effects editor and the re-recording mixer were the same person, and we had such a tight turnaround. The dialogue editor did not have time for that. So I got to do it, which is fun. Some transferable skills. I had a background in production management and like some picture editing and sound editing. So this, like, I genuinely thought I was going to be like just a producer coming out of college. But some transferable skills like attention to detail, file management, project coordination, owning up to your mistakes and willing to learn. Like on my first episode of Blue Bloods, I set up the session entirely wrong from the jump. And so when I had some free time, I was just like, I'm gonna redo this entire thing, even though like the editors already had it, they're already working on it. I'm gonna redo it from the start just for me, so I can have practice. Communication and timeliness. So like you gotta be early and on time for a lot of things. For like the mix sessions and such, but because you're the one who has to help set up before the producers get there, before the directors get there, because once they're in the room, like protecting their time is like the very paramount. Like it's just like who's gonna sit where and whatnot. But like know when to shut up, speak up, and leave the room is like what it comes down to. Obviously, like make small talk with your coworkers, like get to know them, be friendly. But sometimes there's just conversations that you're not supposed to be privy to, and you gotta step out of the room. Sometimes they gotta make a phone call to someone, and you won't be explicitly asked to leave the room, but sometimes it's a good idea to. Or sometimes like especially during mixed reviews, that's not your place to talk, that's not your place to be like, oh, like give your 2 cents about like something creative, unless like it's actually like really dire, like hey, there's like really bad background noise and I don't know if anybody's hearing that, like there's bad feedback. If it's a really big problem, obviously speak up. But if it's more of like a creative choice, that's not your place to speak. You are the lowest rung on the ladder, like no one to speak up. And things will always be things, there's a lot of like um hurry up and wait as well in post. So sometimes things will be happening really, really fast, and sometimes things will be really, really slow. But at all times, of course, like take initiatives. Like if you hear like, hey, like this was supposed to be this thing, or like, um, I thought there was this cue here. Immediate like always be on the lookout to take initiative and be like, oh, do you want me to cut something really quick if we need that? Do you want me to find alts for that as you're like continuing the mix? And always ask questions because you're there to learn. A lot of being an assistant is also learning and refining your ear. When I started as an assistant sound editor, I knew nothing. Like what I know now is like 2% of what I knew then. Like, sorry, what I knew then is 2% of what I know now. That's what I meant to say. I know way exponentially more now that I actually have done it than back then. So how to be a sound assistant. I can actually hold on. I can share this link and put it in the chat. If I can find the chat box, I'll do that later, or we can share the slides at some point. But they're linked. I made like a thing of what my list of like my literally like step by step, like select all the tracks, hit control option this for how my step by step like way of doing things for Blue Bloods was. Obviously, like I do things differently depending on the thing, but and there's some old softwares and plugins that I don't really use anymore on that, but if you want to look at how granular I get, go for it. But this is generally like the flow of like making an assembly. So I ingest all the media and organize the files, like make sure things are opening properly. Sometimes the metadata gets transferred over wrong, or like there's a bump when like you export and it's actually not the full thing, or like it doesn't open up in Pro Tools. Make sure that there's the correct burn-in. So like we're referencing the burn-in for like the date and stuff all the time. So even if it's a day off, like it really is important to like have an updated date to know like what is like the absolute latest, making sure that everything, all the files are labeled consistently and correctly. Um, then you crack the AAF, like open up the AAF file, put in the pictures and guide tracks, organize the track so that dialogue, effects, and music are split up. Remove all the automation, all of the temp mixing that the picture editors do, get rid of that, so that the editors can do their own thing. Then you'll QC that episode and like just watch it or like scrub through it to make sure that all the clips are in the right place. Everything is actually syncing. There's no like things that are muted are supposed to be muted. Things are synced up. So sometimes you go by episode or reel. Reel would just be a portion of a thing. Super session would be multiple reels put together. And if you need to, like expand and sync production sound for the dialogue editor. And for the project I'm on, I copy and relink files. For Blue Bloods, I did it because every episode had the same, like you just got all the production files at once. And unless there was like a stray file, then you'd have to be like, hey, assistant editor, there's like one clip that's clearly from another episode. Which one was that? Whatever. A lot of the effects editors I work with like having a picture cut track or scene change track just so that they know like, hey, this is where the scene changes. One of the effects editors I worked with had it automated because Blue Bloods has a lot of recurring locations that he could press a button and it'll autofill with a bunch of like the air tones for those specific things based off how I labeled them, which is so helpful when you're on like a really short timeline. And then obviously transfer media to editors and back up to the server. I also back it up to my own stuff because always gotta have the two backups. And depending on the editor, they might want it a certain way. That's up to preference for them. Time to open Pro Tools. At this point, I'm going to ask Shayna to stop recording because these are going to be Pro Tools. Okay, we're back. For anyone who's on YouTube, I promise you didn't miss much. It's just about me showing tracks. I didn't play anything. Different project, different vibe. Everything's going to be different, no matter what. Every single project, even if it's with similar people. Half the team that I work with now is the same team. It's still so very different. So like, for example, on the last project with Blue Bloods, I didn't like the AEs on the picture side gave music their tracks. I have to do it now for this project. This project, we don't really have Foley. The other project, there's a lot more Foley. So I was the one who had to send that. Or no, not Foley, like ADR. I mean ADR. So sound editing can mainly be done remote, and then you go in for any mix sessions so that would be the hybrid part. If you're remote, you can get kit fees. So the project I'm on, all the editors are remote, and that was like a specified amount per week. For independent projects, you can obviously negotiate, and that would include like obviously Pro Tools, hard drives, headphones, and then any of the softwares that you use. Some folks I know have like home studios that they might charge more for that, like those mixer for Blue Bloods. He had Dolby Atmos set up at home. So, but we did have space. We did have an office space for editing and mixing. So I didn't get any kit fees for that. They can range from like total pay if you were working on an indie project to weekly stipend. So depending on your contract, that may or may not be negotiable. But if you're hybrid, the thing about being remote is like you can like get kit fees and work by yourself and on your own time. But if you're hybrid or like you can go in more, like I was able to talk with assistant editors who have been doing assistant stuff for sound for 8 to 10 years, and I got to hear horror stories. I got to hear a bunch of things that they learned as I was getting my bearings, because Warner Brothers has multiple projects going on at once, and they have one assistant room. And then there's another day that I was kind of the floater. There's one day I was put in the editor's room, and so I got to record temp stuff with some of the dialogue editors and like talk to them about like their job, and like it's nice to have that social interaction. The mix portion is typically in a studio because, well, if you're doing it online, it's kind of hard, but we did do reviews for Blue Bloods remotely because our post producer is in LA. So we mostly did that over Clearview, which is like a sort of software to like transmit it and then be on Zoom at the same time. They're mainly in person, but can be hybrid. It's project dependent. So some people edit in person at a studio. So some people have like a home-based studio that they typically work at in terms of like vent like another like a post house that they might typically work with. And some people mix at home too if they have a home studio. Other people are employed full time for a specific place. So like the mixer that is on our project, he is employed by that post house, but all the editors are all project dependent. So feature versus TV versus streaming versus documentary. So I only really have experience in like two of these, but I have asked questions with people. Always ask questions. So scripted cable TV, like Blue Bloods, such a fast turnaround. There's 3 different picture teams and 3 different AEs that I spoke with for picture, but there's only one sound team. And we had about 2 to 3 weeks. They would be working on like 2 episodes at a time. We'd be working on one episode. It was like, there's a lot of things happening. So it was all in one session because it was about 42, 43 minutes per episode. And then instead of doing reels for each like cold open and each act, because it's broadcast, we had just 2 seconds of black in between in order to signify the commercial breaks. Oftentimes, the showrunner, director, and picture editor aren't at the mix review just because they are working at other points in the schedule. Like that's just how it is. So for us, we had the post producer, post supervisor, post coordinator, and the whole sound team. Luckily, like it was such a serial show that like the people who were on the show had worked on it. Like it's such a clear um type of style and design that people knew. But the post producer is the one who has to like speak up on behalf of the producers and director. And also in scripted broadcast, typically the director doesn't have as much say in the style just because like there's only so much flair you can put in one episode. The one episode in the 18 episodes that you have, like features longer schedules. So I've heard from a few months, like it takes a summer to do the mix. I've also heard up to a year. Fun fact, Madam Web took an entire year in just sound. So yeah, I know one, the assistant who worked on that. They typically work in reels and there's no such thing as picture lock, basically. It's just when it's done, it's done. Um, I know for Mean Girls, they had reshot something like 2 months before it was in theaters. So the assistant had to like, or no, they had to do like a bunch of ADR, like in the assistant had to do a bunch of like ADR editing. Now this is the one that I'm in. Documentaries. It's not as fast as scripted TV. For us, we're at about, for Just Sound, it's about a little under 6 months. And we work in reels and episodes, but that's because each episode for us is 2 hours long. Um, so you kind of have to. Picture lock in theory, but we were at the mix review with the director and we had to change things on the fly. So in theory, okay, we all got to start somewhere. So why not now? Pivoting. I'm going to give you some stuff of like what, if you have never touched audio and you want to get into it, I use Pro Tools. That is a DAW, a digital audio workspace. Work workspace, I'm pretty sure is the word. I've only ever really used Pro Tools, but these are also some lovely options that I've also heard people use. Most of them work similarly. If you don't want to pay $500 a year like I do, I suggest going for a cheaper option. So here's some plugins. These are also all linked. I separated these in things that I've used versus things that are a little too expensive for me, but I have seen other people use. As an assistant, Editload is great that reads edit decision lists. And those are so helpful when you have to conform things. That you have to pay for. Wave Agent, though, is free. Wave Agent is through sound devices. And so, you know how you put in like the shot and the take number into like the recording device, and like you could change that on Finder and like change the file name? Guess what? The shot and take name actually are burned into the metadata, and that's what Pro Tools reads because you can change the clip name however you like in Pro Tools. So having Wave Agent is great because if I've been on projects where they just did not name any of the files, so I had to go back and manually change all of them. Um, I use now Absentia DX to sync as well because it also has tools to like clean up dialogue, but that requires like the physical iLock key, like this like physical little thing instead of using the cloud like every other program, which is really annoying. But I used to, in order to sync dialogue, I used to use SoundFlow along with Guideline, which is a program within SoundFlow. SoundFlow is great because it automates a lot of things. You know how I said that the effects editor automated the backgrounds? He programmed it with that. So he hits one button and it goes. So when I use auto align post 2 and I ran Guideline through it, it literally would like shift windows around and like start the process for me so I didn't have to keep going back and changing things. Matchbox is something that I want to eventually get for um for as an assistant because that helps you find alts as well as helps you find like the littlest changes in picture. And it's just an absolute powerhouse. Editing, editing and mixing some of these like you can use for both. I use Everyone knows Isotope if you've taken a sound editing class, we love Isotope. I don't pay for it. I instead download an old version and then just keep hitting demo mode. It is not as nearly as good as if you pay for it. But I don't have a grand sitting around. They have like discounts, but I don't have a grand sitting around to justify that right now. So highly recommend just downloading it, doing the 7 day, 30 day or 7 day free trial, and then just keep hitting demo mode. It works. Hush Pro is a Mac only thing, but it is trained on, they say it's AI, but I think it's just another automated like programming thing. It separates out voice, background noise, and reverb, and it's very, very helpful. But I want to note the AI thing because some people have moral and ethical concerns about that. Totally understand it. A lot of people use it. A lot of people have that. DX Revive, it's another dialogue editing tool. Kraken, another dialogue editing tool that helps with dialogue alts and like finding them. So it like transcribes everything so you can find like different sounds. Sound Miner helps you organize an effects library and it has a lot of tags and tools for stuff. Um, don't have that yet. EdiQ helps you export ADR cue sheets from Pro Tools. FabFilter. This is like, I don't know if it's really industry standard, quote unquote, but it's so good. I got the total bundle discount. Highly recommend it. Um, this loudness meter, the Pro Tools has a loudness meter with LUFS, but I do like this interface for the Uline loudness meter, and there is a free version. A lot of these also work on other DAWs, especially, but also sometimes other picture editing tools, so on other nonlinear. So I know like Hush and FabFilter work on DaVinci as well as Premiere, and I think Avid Media Composer. So if you have those, you can also do sound editing in DaVinci. These are all different types of reverbs and compressors. Futzbox specifically is a compressor or like editor that shortcuts doing different like vocal filters. So if you need something to go through like a blowhorn versus a cop radio versus a PA system, that's a shortcut to do that. And then these two down here, I want to get one of them at least. These are two softwares or plugins to help upmix. So even if you don't have a studio at home, you can then upmix to 5.1 because a lot of people still like that. More programs. Okay. File management. Backing things up is so important. But however, if you drag and drop from from one little Explorer or Finder window to another, there could easily be things that can get corrupted or messed up. So ChronoSync, that's like a $50 thing, $60 thing from Mac. I use the free ones. Here's the free ones. And these, you can program it to verify. So not only does it make sure it copies it over, but it reads the metadata. It's just like, hey, this is like slightly bigger, or the video has a different resolution, but it's named the same. So it verifies that it is the same and that it completely copies over, because we've all had it where like we're uploading something and then it just crashes. So this one will check to make sure that it is correct. These two are Mac only, but they help with Finder organization and like just finding things and like renaming stuff. And I don't have any of these except Copybot. Thank you, Matt Rigby, also an Ithaca alum. Um, Copybot helps to like obviously help copy things over, but helps read a spreadsheet to see like which files would be missing from like what you run. I have not used the other ones. However, I do have them like bookmarked because people have recommended them to me as like using macros to automate things, and just like finding what workflow works best for you. I'm gonna take a second to read the chat. No such thing as picture lock. Yes, it is scary. It's very scary. Oh, I've never heard of FL Studio. What
Fruity
is that?
Loops.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's for music mostly.
Yeah, it's usually used for music. Yeah.
I agree, Shanna. Matt Rigby is really cool. Um, he's a great person. Getting your foot in the door. So everyone you meet is so important. The industry is so small. So I'm going to tell you a story. I remember Screenboat, that thing that I PA'd on. There was one single day that one of the second ACs had to leave for half the day. So then I became a camera PA for the day instead of a general PA. Just so happens that the person who was normally doing sound was out. So there was a different team of people there who were day playing. They were really chill. They started talking to us, and I was like, oh, yeah, I also do sound. I befriended the sound mixer. We exchanged numbers. Months later, Rufus, who also graduated from Ithaca, is like, hey, I'm in some WhatsApp groups for sound things in New York. Do you want to be in them? And I go, sure. Turns out, guess who runs them? The sound mixer from Screenboat. And then I get into a group of like specifically women in sound just so that like just have a space for that to get away from some bros. Sorry, bros. We love you guys, but sometimes we need a space. And then from there, apparently one of those people who I've never personally met in person, mind you, the person who put this group together, I met for half a day. She's like, oh yeah, I like teach at NYU. I have some grad students who are looking for folks to do their graduate projects for cheap. And I'm like, yes, please. I'll do that. And guess what? I have a meeting tomorrow to see if we're going to be a good fit and I can sound design this person's grad project. All through the line of like people who I tangentially know. I've done Facebook groups. That's kind of hit or miss because anybody can join them. WhatsApp groups is like, you know that these, at least one person there personally know these people and has vouched for them to join this group. So a lot of references for like projects to do if like someone can't do it, or there's a lot of discussion of like programs people use. Even though I'm not really a production sound mixer much, I still sit in there to be like, yes, what mics are you using? How are you miking these people up? What are you using for all your equipment? And it's great. Always ask questions. So when I'm in those group chats, when I'm in the mixing stages, always ask questions because everyone started somewhere and anyone can be your mentor. There's people who I consider mentors who probably don't know that they're my mentor, and that's okay. But I look up to them, they answer my questions, they're very helpful, and I very much respect their work. So far, at least in the post sound group, I have not met a jerk. Most people are very nice. But we've all been there where there's that one person who really grinds your gears on a project and you're like, I don't want to work with you again. There will be jerks. I've heard of people crying in mix sessions because they were being yelled at by a sound editor in front of the director and producer. I've heard of a very famous and like Oscar-winning re-recording mixer having been racist to an assistant. Like, there's gonna be jerks out there. Just be nice. Don't be a jerk. Again, know when to ask questions, when to shut up. Be personable, make small talk. So some people, like there's people who are gonna go on a trip, ask them about that. I go to the climbing gym after work and I have like my climbing shoes hooked to my bags. People have asked like, oh, how was climbing yesterday? Start conversation, get to know the people you work with because you might be remote or hybrid for a bit. You want to know that you want to enjoy being around the people you're going to be in a windowless and dark room with for like 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And never underestimate the power of just being in the room. There was a time where I almost cut like some effects for a thing because it was missing in a queue. Turns out it was just in a go back that we were waiting for. In general, work hard, don't be a jerk. Okay, I'm almost done, I swear. What's new, Cindy Lou? So these are things that I'm working on or have been a part of. So Colin and I are part of the American Revolution that has a trailer.
No sound. Is anyone else hearing sound? I'm not hearing sound. All right. Yeah, no sound. No sound.
Damn.
That's important for you.
Okay. Well, I thought I really
Looks
was
good, though.
sitting here as if the sound was playing because there's some really good music in that. Okay, then I won't play the Screamboat trailer. It's on Instagram. Screamboat movie. Steamboat Willie goes all murder on a Staten Island ferry boat. So other than that, I'm still in post-production for a micro budget short film for some friends at who are from Ithaca. They're now in New York. And I'm also still working on like producing. I'm an AP for one of my friend's thesis films, which is a very ambitious project and I'm really excited for it. Always look for, in other terms, like there's always grants available to get money for funding for films. And there's also a lot of training programs. I'm keeping my options open. I signed up for an NFL experience-ship. Have I ever done broadcasts like stuff for like sports? No. Do I really understand football and like the rules of it? No. I'm still gonna try. I'm signed up for I applied for a training program through the DGA. Have I really done much AD work? No. Am I still going to shoot my shot? Yes. And there's also join nonprofit organizations. There's so many communities out there in order to like get people together. Most of the things that I've joined have been women focused or animation focused, just because I did have an animation phase in college. Not working in that space right now, or like they're about POC, but as a general one, highly recommend Anti-Gravity Academy. If you know the movie DD, from Sean Wang, it was made because he was a part of that. They do a lot of different programs with a lot of different groups. Anti-Gravity Academy is great to join, and they do a lot of satellite sessions, is what they call it. It's very similar to this, and they also post those. It's on like a one of the Dolby YouTube channels, but they do post those public on YouTube, and they have seminars for you to go to as well if you want to be like in a actual webinar. But yeah, questions.
I think Jacob had one in the chat earlier.
Okay.
What might a typical chain of effects on a voice look like?
Okay. I'm still getting coming to gripes with like my workflow. Um, uh, First off, you would have to cut it. So it wouldn't even be effects. You would have to cut it together because sometimes they're cutting in the middle of a line and you're trying to stitch it back together in order to get the coverage, or you're trying to make a word sound a little bit better. You cutting together alts, so like you'd want to make that somewhat smooth. um, you would generally you'd go big to small with noises. So there was one time they cut the actual shot of people walking in, but they used the audio from it, and the floors were so squeaky. No one was moving in the shots that they had now, so I had to completely take out creaky footsteps. I used Hush for that. It's very good. And I've also taken out like a whole train going on outside with that. Highly recommend. Um, So any obvious noise you would take out first. So you could use Hush, you could use
Oh, sorry. I meant like compressors, like that kind of stuff.
honestly, I'm still kind of figuring out how compressors work, because I'm like, why would you want to compress a file? Like
Yeah, it doesn't make sense
um
when you say it out loud.
when in turn that's normally used in mixing. So depending on what music is going on and like the effects that are also going on, you might want to bring out the brightness or tone down the brightness of some sounds of some dialogue. Um, and to my knowledge, that's basically what compressors do. How you tweak it, I'm still exploring that. That's why I like being in the room, because then I can ask questions. Because no matter, sometimes you just need 5 million times of it being explained to you to understand it. Maybe my next thing will be what EQs and like how to mix, because maybe I'll learn that. But based off of like you wouldn't, because of how frequencies work, you wouldn't want the dialogue to be in similar frequencies to the music. And obviously, like the composer and music folks will try and do that. But sometimes the resonance just kind of like overlaps. And so you would want to even it out and brighten up some parts, or like tone it down and like lean on the lower parts depending on what's happening. Um, from my knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
What is the audio engineering group for women called? I have not seen one yet. Do you mean for like the WhatsApp group? Because that is like a private group chat that like I was added to, in which we have it called Sound Baddies of NYC. Hello?
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, by the way. Nice.
Hi.
I'm wondering what your experience has been like as a freelancer in New York City, because that's gotta be, I mean, like how far ahead of time do you look for your next gig, and how do you balance multiple gigs simultaneously? How daunting? Because it sounds pretty daunting to me.
Oh, it's so daunting, because the thing is, I like the reason why I have the two gigs that I have is because Marlena taught me, and she kind of took me under her wing as her assistant. And so when she's on a project that she is the supervisor, so she has hiring power, and then that has the budget for an assistant. Those things have to line up for her to be able to hire me, because I am nowhere near experienced enough to be like a dialogue editor or effects editor. Though like that is my goal in the next few years. But those two things have to link up, because like in as I said in my presentation from the fall, I could easily see assistant sound editors at their job either being completely what's the corporate term for it, like dissolved, like they just take away the position, or highly reduced in the next 5 to 10 years, because there's so many, like like how I sync up sound is highly automated, and so I would not be surprised if like there could be someone on picture and sound who does both, who's like the funnel person for both sides, and is like in the loop for both teams. So it is incredibly daunting, especially since like Blue Blood started late because of the two of the dual strikes in 2023. And then there was the whole IATSE contract back in 2024, in which a lot of production slowed again because they were scared that people would go on strike again. So I was unemployed from July, like mid-July, all the way up until my birthday in November of last year. And then after June, I have no idea what's happening, because um like even right now I'm splitting the mixing weeks for as an assistant. So like even though the mix is 12 weeks, I'm getting paid for 6, the other guy's getting paid, like Matt Rigby's getting paid for 6. Like that's being split up. So um oh, I didn't even talk about rates. Okay. For entry level, depending on where you start in at, you can be paid anywhere between $26 an hour all the way up to $60 an hour, depending on the company and project you're working for and the contract they're with and the position you're at. So it depends. Pretty solid entry level paying job. However, you could be unemployed for half the year. I have no idea where I'm going after June 9th. So, like, I still work a part-time job. I'm still a part-time gymnastics coach for kids. So you kind of have to keep it open. And the gigs that you are gonna get as indie is gonna be kind of shit pay. I produce like the micro budget I'm producing. I know it's micro budget. The whole project for the entire sound design, we only had $400 in the budget to go to me. And so that is edit, mix the whole enchilada. Like I had to record Foley in my basement and hope that the heater wasn't turning on. Like, and make sure that my entire family was not in the house. So it's very scary having to like juggle all of it. But I know a lot of people who are still doing it. Like I know people who still like mix some grad students projects, and even while working union gigs. So
Miles had a question in the chat earlier. What is the audio engineering group for women called?
I don't know if there's specifically like a organization through MPEG. There's actually, let me look at my email, because I'm supposed to actually, on next Thursday I'm supposed to be going to an event. There's through the Editors Guild, there is like mentorship circles. I haven't heard back from my mentor for that. I emailed. I don't know, man. But there's like a social event at the Editors Guild for people who signed up for that mentorship circle. Um, so being in the union does give you cool resources like that. Outside of that, I don't know specifically for audio. In terms of the WhatsApp group, that was like a private group that like people made in order to share projects and like and stuff. And that's called Sound Baddies from NYC and has a little dancing emoji. Um, if you want to join like a Facebook group, there's Media Mavens, which is just femme and queer folks in general. And however, like that's going to be like hit or miss in terms of projects, just because it's all over the country. Some people are doing like self plugs when that's not like technically on the rules. People might be posting stuff that isn't paid, even though the rules say that like you have to get paid. It can get sketchy on Facebook groups. Some people have had a real good luck with it, others haven't, but that's still by and large the best place that I've seen people reference and use and get gigs as they're building out their network. Other than like, college. College is great.
I had a question.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm thinking about like you had mentioned earlier, like, you're doing freelance, but you'd mentioned that like there are people who will like work for the post houses themselves.
Mhm.
I guess I'm thinking like that was like I think that so I'm like a second semester senior, so I'm currently job searching. So hearing all of this information is super helpful because like it's good to know like specifics from someone who's like in it right now. about like what the job types are. But I guess I'm thinking about like as far as like positions like working in sound at a post house like full time, is that something that typically you see as like entry level, or is it a scenario of like you have to kind of like freelance for a while and get experience before working one of those, I guess is my question. I don't know if you know, but if anyone.
It's gonna be the same answer that is like for everything. It depends. So, for example, the assistants who I knew from the Warner Bros. House, they were freelance and like they were just one of them actually like is like full time at Warner Brothers. But for the most part, they told me like they had internships which were either unpaid or eventually they got like minimum wage, which in New York does not go very far. But eventually they became an assistant and they're told like you have to be an assistant for like 10 years before you can move up. That's a lie. I know people who are the same age as them who are now assistant like editors and re-recording mixers. But for those two that I met, they mainly worked at um, post houses and they interned first, or they got their foot in some other way to become an apprentice or an assistant, and that's how they got their foot in the door. For me, I work freelance. For them, they found their place at a post house. So like the re-recording mixer on American Revolution right now, he was like, I was like, how did you become a re-recording mixer? And he was like, I was a mix tech. I was a mixing assistant for a while for another place, and then I became a mix tech here, and then I eventually became a re-recording mixer. And it's really about those people who will give you that chance to do those stretch opportunities and do those different tasks that can help you like level up your skills and give you that opportunity to do so. So like the effects editor from uh, the re-recording mixer from Blue Bloods, there was like a short indie project where he was like, hey, like it's like for no money, but there's like a 30-minute short that wants to that needs like cleaned up dialogue. Do you want to work on your dialogue editing skills? I was like, yes, of course. And he was very gracious to like he could have easily like cleaned it up himself and and done the mix and taken the whole paycheck, but he decided to split it with me, and that was very, very kind of him. And it's people you who do believe in you and want to help you out and train you basically. I agree, Eric. It really depends on people's paths. The two people I met at Warner Brothers, they both were originally music majors. So, of
I
course,
could,
Oliver. Yes, Miles, what's up?
oh, I was just maybe going to piggyback off of your answer, maybe if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Uh, I'm a recording engineer at a studio in New Orleans. Um, and the way that I work, I'm also co-managing the studio, so I have like multiple hats. Because the owner of the studio just had a baby, so he's on maternity leave, and myself and like one other engineer have taken on the managerial thing. So basically, like there are some setups where you get a percentage of sales. In our situation, I graduated from Syracuse, and last year, and now I'm already kind of managing a studio. I think you can. Like, there are a lot more paths like that if you're not in New York or LA. But in general, recording engineers kind of pay a flat rate or an hourly rate based off of whatever their contract is. I think even like Subcat in Syracuse, I think studio time for engineers is like $40 an hour, but you can charge your own clients like whatever you want. Um, so there are a lot of, I know it's a completely different type of work. You've been talking a lot about film. This is a studio that does a lot of music and dialogue for,
Mm.
film and podcasts as well. So there's I don't know if that just gives you some more options about ideas to make money.
Yeah, no, that's definitely helpful. I know like thinking about like stuff over this, I don't know, because I've been thinking about like stuff that I want to go into. I know that where I live there's a lot of music stuff, and that's something I've been thinking about as well. But yeah, that's
Yeah,
definitely helpful. Thank you.
yeah. A lot of people who do um, like for film and TV, they also do music. Like I know Rufus mixes his own music because he also like makes his own music. Um, I know some folks who also work in video games. Like they actually have like a video game console in like a game bar in Brooklyn, and they did the music for that. So I know some folks. There's like someone from Ithaca who graduated like 2020 who now is like award-winning effects editor for um one of those first-person shooter games. So definitely like there's overlaps with a lot of stuff. I didn't talk about like commercials here, and that's also a big area. Um, oh, Eric brings up the PA thing. So if you want to do like post management, the ladder is very similar to how it would be on set. You'd be post PA, coordinator, um, supervisor, manager, associate producer, co-producer, producer. And they're the ones who do all the logistics of scheduling and like where are we going to have color versus VFX and all those stuff. How many weeks are we going to budget for each episode, for each step of the process? How are we going to do the logistics of media transferring? So that's that team.
I have another question. I'm making a documentary, and I'm curious if you would recommend there's gonna be a voiceover,
Mhm.
and that's like it's gonna be like basically guided by the voiceover. Would you recommend doing the voiceover before doing any of the picture stuff? Is it ever done like that where somebody records the sound and then it's edited to that in a documentary style thing?
Yes, honestly, I think Colin might have a better insight into this because he actually started as an intern for American Revolution and probably saw more of that. Because I saw that like they were rewriting the script even before picture lock, and so they were changing things and how they phrase it and the pacing of some stuff. So Colin, if you have any insight for that type of thing.
I'm very sorry. I missed the first part of the question. Could you repeat it? I was looking.
Yes. It's so I'm doing a documentary that's going to be pretty much like most of the audio is going to be voiceover, and obviously it's like there's gonna be some newsreels and music and stuff, but it's like very voiceover centric, and I'm curious if you'd recommend doing the voice acting stuff, like recording the whole thing first, then editing the picture like to that.
Yeah, actually, that's the only way we do it at Florentine is first we do a blind assembly, which is purely narration and voiceover, and then only after that we start editing picture and sound effects. So, yes,
Oh,
you're on the
cool.
right track.
Cool, thanks.
I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, but I'm currently adding a new slide, and it's just a list of post houses that I have accumulated after stalking so many different like um like credits of that are in like on IMDb or in the end credits of a movie. So I have like a list of a bunch of companies, and I'm just parsing out which ones are the post places and like where they're located because some of them are located in just LA, some of them are in New York, some of them work everywhere. So because I also have camera houses on here, so I'm trying to get through these.
I have actually another question related to that.
Go
It's
for
all
it.
right. I don't know how much time we have left. So I don't want to like take up everything.
We chill here for a
Okay.
while, so
Yeah,
people,
but
if you gotta leave, you gotta leave. It's okay.
I guess thinking about like your like list of post houses and everything, I guess I'm thinking about um like so I'm trying to think about like if I were to try to like apply to one of these places, like to, you know, do an internship or something like that, or as like some kind of assistant. I guess I'm thinking about like I'm trying to figure out like what the best way to approach that would be, because a lot of the times when I go on their websites and stuff, they're kind of like oriented towards like clients and everything. So I'm kind of like, I don't know if I need to specifically reach out to them, but I also, you know, about stuff, but I'm also like, I know that different industries and stuff have like their sort of
Protocols.
like yeah, like conventions of like politeness and stuff. So I'm like, I don't want to bother people if that's like not the thing you do. But I guess I don't know if it's mostly through like word of mouth or like talking to people like who work at these companies. I don't totally know exactly. Like I guess I'm just thinking about like getting my foot in the door kind of thing. If you have any advice on that. Um
I
I
mean,
know
I've blind
obviously it's
emailed.
not exactly the job that you work, but I figured I would ask.
Yeah. I mean, I blind email, so I have done that. It has not come to fruition because sometimes um, folks like that's just not how they operate, or it's just sometimes slow. Like the re-recording mixer for Blue Bloods, he typically works out of Warner Brothers just because that's where Blue Bloods was. Um, but sometimes you just kind of have to just keep bugging them and be like, hey, I'm still here. Remember me. Like, if you have a project for me, please let me know. And you kind of do have to keep bugging them, even if you are in the industry. Um, as Shayna says, they do like to give tours. Some are more dodgy about it than others. It really depends on some of them, but it doesn't hurt to ask, even if like you don't ask if you can't get if you email the office manager and like they don't respond. So if you want to like ask for a coffee chat, at least that's how we called it at DreamWorks and Disney. It's like coffee chats where like you would sit down for 30 minutes and just ask them about their job. Who knows? Maybe they'll like you and they'll be like, oh, I would love to train you, or like they'll listen to a mix that you did. Um, a lot of them are pretty friendly. Like I've followed like some Ithaca alumni who I've never met, but they're in the sound business and they just follow me back. And if you find any of them on Instagram, definitely better than having their LinkedIn. Um, but if you can get like their email, like they do, like we live and die by our emails because like we sometimes have group text, but like in order to have everything on paper, like have everything written down, it's on email. Um, so highly recommend that. And yes, as Shayna says, see who Shayna, Brad, and I like have on our LinkedIn's because there are some folks who are there. Um,
Yeah, LinkedIn crawling and like you said, cold emailing is a great way to leverage your school network and find people who
yeah.
are, just 2 degrees of separation away from you, but working in an area you want to work.
Even if it's just to be like, oh, like what do you do for your job kind of thing. Even if you already know, just like to pick their brain, because sometimes that's helpful. And people like talking about their jobs. Like post people are very much we don't get the limelight. We're not the directors and writers and like actors who get the limelight. So we like getting excited about our job and be like, yeah, it was a cool effect when I did that. Like when like this was the thing. Um, yeah, there in the union, there's like some panels where it'd be like here's the post team, and like you get like a screener for something, which is also very helpful. But that's also like within like the union, so like that's not like it's very gatekeepy that way. But there's definitely folks who like would love to chat about stuff. Like the music editor on this project also was a re-recording mixer and supervising sound editor of Past Lives. So like the supervising sound editor for Nosferatu is the one of the effects editors. We mix in the stage that like that Past Lives was mixed in. So it's a very small, as I said, the industry is very small. So people know each other, even if they don't have the answer, they might be able to reference you to someone who fits your vibe, fits what you want to do more. Um, yeah, as long as you be nice about it, don't be a jerk. Don't go demanding things. Just be like, hey, if you have time, if you're polite, people will typically and you catch them on a good day, people are like, yeah, sure, why not? Especially if they're from the same school.
Yeah, I actually had a recent experience like that, just in terms of reaching out to people just, at will. Because last week I applied, or not applied, but like just did a message board thing to a post VFX house that is actually pretty local to my area, like only 30 minutes away, and works in both New York and New Jersey. Uh, I just hit them up because they worked on some cool indie projects that some I have seen and really like, some that I've actually have some degree of like there's those degrees of separation that I've worked on at a different studio, so the common ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just again being nice in your email, being like, hey, I saw this and that, I heard your podcast. And then he reached out to me pretty quickly, and then we just did like a 30-minute Google Meet chat just to
Yeah.
introduce each other, talk about the industry in Jersey, and the fact that we have the common ground of Ithaca and Syracuse, because he's actually a Syracuse grad, I found out. Uh, and then I talked about this group, and then we just built the common ground, had a really good conversation, and then he said he'll hit me up for any future projects if he's able to build up his team a little bit more. So you never know.
Yeah, that's a good point, Eric, too, about in a cold call, just like mentioning a project and praising, and like when you have a reason to reach out and contact someone. Uh,
Hmm.
it's amazing how well people will respond to that.
Yeah, especially if it's niche. Like I've reached out to two different studios about Fusion, which is what Shayna teaches in her class, uh, because that's a very niche compositing software compared to Nuke. So if there is a place that, has some sort of niche software or niche skill set, uh, feel free to reach out to them because they'll be looking for those types of artists a lot of the time.
Well, anyone else have a question?
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, on the presentation, there's also my contact information if anybody wants, but
Thank
you
you
could
so
just
much.
search up my name on Instagram and I'm
Did you
there.
add the slide yet?
Yes, I added the slide about
You want to
the-
just pop it up,
Sure.
recording?
Sure. All right, wait, share. I remember how to do this. I can do technology. Post houses. Here's like some that I have researched, or not researched, but like found in like the end credits of things, or I've seen them like in LA. You can walk around and like you'll end up finding just where they are. Like there's a sign outside, or I've heard about them through friends. So, um, mostly LA and New York is what I've seen. Um, There are some that are elsewhere in the country, but those seem to be the biggest hubs. I will say, like, say New York, like the biggest ones are these four, with Postworks, Harbor, Gold's Crescent Company 3, and Signature Post being like the ones that I've seen the most in my time of doing stuff. Soundtrack and Parabolic are also up there. Oh, I forgot to add Warner Bros. Also Warner Brothers. I'll add Warner Brothers. And then in terms of my contact information, ta-da! You can find me. If I don't have that, like if you find someone who's a PhD student, that's the wrong Jacquelyn Shin. We have the same spelling. We have very different career choices. So if you find a psych degree, that's not me. Anything that's film, that is me. So very, very easy to find me.
Appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
It's so funny because there was a time where if you looked up my name, it would be my bio from my website, but then a picture of her from grad school. I'm like, and mind you, this Jacquelyn Chin is also, she's not Asian, she's Black. And so it was very
Okay.
jarring when it says Jacquelyn Chin, a Cantonese American filmmaker. And then you see a Black psych student where you're just like, that is clearly like the Google's algorithm did it
Power of
wrong,
Google,
did
yeah.
did a
Love
mistake here. Oh, Formosa. Yes, I literally went on tour. I went on a Paramount tour. Why didn't I add them? Oh my goodness. So many. There's so many. Formosa group. Great group. Great sound group.
Yeah, I've seen them a lot on like CW shows.
Yeah. They do a lot of the CBS shows out there. They do a lot of the CW as well.
It's Picture Shop.
Yep. Streamland Media.
So I think I covered most of the houses. So cool.
And if you're lucky, Skywalker Sound.
Literally, oh my goodness. One of my friends got to tour the ranch back in summer of
Ooh.
2022 because
Mhm.
like three of them got to tour it. I was so jealous. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I would love that.
Yeah, there's an Ithaca grad that works for Lucasfilm Animation right now. I'm like, oh,
Yep. Yep.
I was
I
just
have
say there's one for the on the sound team too, Matt
Yep.
Mickelson.
hmm
Kills it.
oh yeah, I know Matt.
Wow, small world.
Yeah, he was like a year or two ahead of me, and we've worked on a couple projects together.
Small industry. Yeah. I know someone who one of my roommates back in 2022. He went to Harvard, but he was an intern and we like lived together. He was an intern for Lucasfilm. So he got to see the volume and he got to like see Ashoka being made. Like small industry, man. Small industry.
Another reason it's so important to be kind, right?
Yeah.
Always
Oh, also, like, even if it's not an explicit post studio, like I know that like DreamWorks Animation has like their own Like they have their own engineers for when people come in, because unless it's done, like the final mix is done somewhere else, but like all the recordings are done in-house. Or when I worked at Disney Streaming, like all the recordings for the other languages had to be done at different places. So there's like Ayuno who does a lot of the Asian languages and they do all the mixing for that. Like Pixelogic does a lot of the European languages. So there's a lot of options. It's just hard to like actually get it, like wrench the door open and be like, hello, can I get a job? I promise I'm competent and I'm nice.
But now they know you and Colin, and they can do your
Right.
job when you move up.
Honestly, that's the goal. I'm just like, please, I wanna be able to like be able to hire people and be like, see, this is another person from Ithaca. They're great.
Or
Please hire
Syracuse.
us. Or Syracuse, please hire us. We're part of the little mafia, please.
Cool. Well, in case people have to go, we will end it. Thank you, Jacquelyn, and thanks, Colin, for joining as well. You're welcome to come back anytime.